Hi, everyone. We encountered some technical difficulty with the LinkedIn Live site and had to restart our programming. So hopefully you got to see a little bit of what was presented. If not, we have a wonderful video by our national president, Monica Vargas, and as well as I also highlighted some of our wonderful local sponsors in the DFW area who are working hard to help support diversity and in the community. So I'd like to start this presentation because we don't have as much time, and I'd like to bring in Mercedes. Mercedes is she works at Whitkeefer. She is a senior partner. Mercedes, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Good afternoon, I guess morning and afternoon, wherever people might be. Yes, I'm Mercedes Chacon-Vance. I'm a senior partner with Whitkeefer. Whitkeefer is a retained executive global search firm specializing in mission-driven organizations, prominently in support of healthcare organizations in their pursuit for senior leadership searches.
Great. It sounds like a great organization, and is promoting to get great talent. And you and I have been talking a lot about how do we ace this interview. We have people who are going to be interviewing tomorrow, and I know they're really excited, and I know that we're in this new virtual space that is kind of uncomfortable. Let's be honest. I have to look at you virtually. I can't see you in person, and it's like the new normal. So we really want to know, what are some tips to kind of ace this interview? What tips do you have for people as they go into the new normal and feel a little bit more uncomfortable with the virtual atmosphere?
Well, I mean, I think you're absolutely right. I think the last 18 months, 14 months, whatever it's been, I think we've all had to readjust. I think employers have had to adjust. I think people who are looking for jobs have had to adjust about how they're presenting themselves. As a search firm, we've had to navigate working with clients virtually ourselves. And so the reason why this is so exciting for me is that I spend so much time, I interview candidates myself to qualify them for the searches that I'm doing, but then we present those candidates to our hiring manager, to committees, and I sit in on many interviews, and that I'm either doing myself or I'm actually watching as they're being interviewed by committee members. It might be a hiring manager, it might be two, and it might be a team of 15 that are interviewing these people. So going into this virtual world, where I think that at least the first conversations, first round interviews, I think they are going to stay virtual, because I think that it is, I think it's easier to get on people's calendars. I think that organizations can interview more people at a time. People don't have to be there in the room. They can do this anywhere, team members. And so what we really try to do is help our clients and our candidates, helping them to be successful and really show their best self in these interviews. This transition into the virtual interview is a little different, and making that real connection is the most difficult thing, I think. And the way that you really can try to make a connection is practice being on screen. We all have cameras now. You can open whatever. I open up my Zoom my Zoom camera, and I practice even today for today's session. I went through the questions. I practiced, my thoughts. I wrote down a little script, and that's not cheating. That is a way for you to prepare. Think about questions that you think they might ask you. And Lori sent me some questions that I think some of the group sent that they had interest in learning more about. Practice, read the job description, kind of think about what experiences this job is going to be asking of you, and try to think about questions around that, and then practice them alone. Then call a trusted mentor, a friend, to get on, like Lori and I are on together. I feel like it's just the two of us, and so that you can feel comfortable. You can see that you're presenting yourself. So, you can put that outline on your screen, but you want to make sure that you are being able to look straight into the camera. You also can write it out. If you like to write it, put it near your monitor. That's actually a plus of right now, because you can have those outlines of some of the key things that you think you bring to this organization, using examples of what you've done that you think that will lend well to the skill set that they're looking for. The other thing is smile. Nerves get the best of us. We have to remember to take a breath, slow down. But also, you don't want to slow down. That you want to show your energy. I just did this a couple of days ago, and there were a couple of candidates that were very stiff, very, they didn't show that energy. And I feel badly for those people, because maybe they're just not quite as comfortable. So those, I think, are some of the quick tips that I would give, especially in this virtual environment.
So you deal with a lot of executives, and I know you help to prep them and get them ready for the big interview. And so the big question is, what are 2 or 3 don'ts that you've seen that you're like, oh no, definitely don't do this?
I think that not practicing. Okay, I said that before. I will go over that, but not practicing. I think that comes out. I think not knowing enough about your employer, not knowing what the initiatives are that organization is trying to do. If you're looking at a leadership role, read their strategic plan, read their mission. Never underestimate how much a hiring organization wants to see that you've done your homework on them. It shows your commitment. It shows that you've been thoughtful. I mentioned this to Laura when we were doing our prep, but research is good, but if you get the names of the people you're going to be interviewing with, read about their jobs, make connections about things that they do that you can make in correlation. Don't stalk them on Facebook and see their pictures of their Disney World trip.
Wait a minute, that's we don't do that?
That is creepy. You can't say something like, hey, I saw you were at Disney World a couple of weeks ago. I'm a huge Disney fan. That kind of tends to make people feel a little, that's beyond the boundaries of the professional research that you should do. So that would definitely be a don't. Something I am absolutely, when I get nervous and I'm not well prepared, I can overtalk. My nerves get the best of me. I can ramble. That doesn't seem like it could be the case, but I can. And I'm not safe. I don't stay focused on the subject. I've done it within my own pitches when I'm trying to work for an organization. And then the other thing is reading the room, making eye contact. It's hard virtually again, because you can't see people's body languages, but really trying to kind of pay attention to the heads on the screen, or if you're in a live, body language. Are they pulling back from you? Do they seem like they're getting bored? Read that body language, because I think that will help with all the other things. And again, smile, take a breath, relax.
Oh, it's so hard to relax these days. Are there things that people should do right before they do the interview?
Well, what I like to do is I like the 5 to 10 minutes before, even with something like this, or if I'm getting on with a client, I like to center. I like to take a moment, breathe, really spend time going over my script again, but not overthinking it. And just remember that, I can only be me. I can only show the person that I am, and really being genuine and true to the person that you are. I mean, I think that's where I try to go. So that's my preparation. And what I would say is, if you've done all those other things, take that 5 or 10 minutes, breathe, realize that you got this, and then just be ready to go with energy and good answers.
Okay, good answers. Okay. All right. So should we have, I guess a lot of people are asking behavioral questions, but some people ask off the wall, out of the box question. How do you, what are your suggestions for those type of random questions that seem a little off base from the interview that sometimes get asked? How do people handle those?
I mean, I think it's taking a moment, especially if it catches you off guard. Don't be afraid of taking a moment and thinking about it, and stepping back. And, if it is something that's kind of out of bounds, or, we talk about, implicit bias. We talk about questions that can be out of the box. It is okay if they are overly personal, to say, I appreciate all the questions and this dialogue, but I would rather stick to kind of the professional questions if we could stay in that realm. I think, sometimes you get that question, what's your greatest weakness? And I think that takes people a little bit aback, like, they haven't really prepared. You will get that sometimes. And I think really being thoughtful and genuine about where your strengths are and where where the challenges might be in this position. I will tell you, the one thing that committees or hiring managers really don't like is my greatest weakness is I just work too hard. Because that's kind of it's not really a weakness. You're kind of saying I'm up at 2 a.m. doing these things. No, employers want you to be truthful. They know no one is perfect. Talk about things that you can improve on, and that might be public speaking. That might be time management. That might mean you are stepping up into a role. You only oversee one person right now, but this is going to be a team of 5. Talk about that. Say, my management experience is a little more limited than this position is, and I feel like that could be, something that that might bring up a question for you. But I've been part of this organization. I'm a part of this organization where I'm leading. I volunteer and I lead volunteers. And so give examples about how you're trying to bridge that gap to that weakness or that challenge. And don't be afraid to just say, I don't feel comfortable with that question, or, answer it respectfully, but then kind of move on. I think genuine and truthfulness always wins the day.
Mercedes, I appreciate you so much for giving us this advice about how we can definitely ace the interview, and hopefully your tips inspire those who are watching this to just portray a little bit more confidence, and do their research, smile, and give it their best shot by having the examples of the job that they know they can do.
Exactly.
Well, thank you so much, Mercedes. And if you'd like to follow Mercedes, she's on LinkedIn. Okay.
Yes, thank you so much, Lori. I appreciate your time, and good luck, everybody. Keep working hard.
All right. All right. Next, I'd like to bring up a colleague of mine named George. Hi, George.
Hi, good morning, Lori. How are you today?
Doing fantastic. I am super excited about your panel. So tell us about it, and let's get the show on the road.
Well, great. Thank you, Lori. Well, good morning, everyone. Afternoon for some of you. So again, my name is George Avila, and I serve as the System Vice President of Mission Integration for Christus Health. And so we're based here in Irving, Texas, and we're a nonprofit Catholic healthcare system. And we have organizations throughout the United States, Mexico, Chile, and Colombia. And we work hard every day to ensure that we extend the healing ministry of Jesus Christ to all the communities that we are privileged to serve. And so although that is my professional role, I'm also blessed to be able to serve as the treasurer for the board at NALHE DFW. And so my profession, and with NALHE, that's where my heart is. So very excited to be a part of that. So thank you everyone for joining us today for this very important discussion. As we were starting to think about what are things that would be helpful for people as you're starting your career, starting to think about what you would like to do, we wanted to talk about diversity in health careers. Most of us know the traditional healthcare careers, right? And if you're anything like me, when you thought about, I want to be in healthcare, you kind of pictured yourself, I think I will be at the bedside, particularly providing direct patient care. And so at some point in my journey, I realized, well, I think maybe the direct patient care route isn't the way I'm going to go, but I do want to continue to serve people and serve our community. And so the wonderful thing about it is that there is such a diversity of roles throughout healthcare that we can participate in. And so today we're going to be talking to two professionals that are working in diverse roles in healthcare. So joining us today, we have Rodrigo Zurita, who serves as the CEO.
Hey guys.
Hi, Rodrigo. That serves as the CEO for Disinfect Well, which is a managed disinfection service company which serves hospitals and clinics by mitigating microbial contamination through non-toxic disinfection and verification through rapid on-site testing, providing a comprehensive, sustainable solution that is safe for humans and minimally invasive to operations. So welcome, Rodrigo. And I know, especially in the times that we're living, I'm very interested to hear how your company had to shift and transform, right, to be able to meet the needs of the realities that we're facing. And also, we have Chris Burciaga, who is joining us, and he currently serves as the president of HHS. And HHS offers a diverse set of support services for the healthcare resort, senior living, government, aviation, and education industries. They intentionally invest resources to ensure operational and service integrity for every service and in every industry. So thank you so much for joining us today. So as we get into our conversation, just wanted to kind of check in. And I think, as I was mentioning, I happen to be in a diverse role in healthcare. And so when I get to tell people, hey, so they ask me, what do you do? And I say, well, I'm the vice president of mission integration. And so people usually give me this weird look like, what? Or you get that, okay, let's move on. Where's the champagne, on the flight that I'm on? And so I generally have to then explain, okay, well, this is what a vice president of mission integration does. And so please stop giving me, I love it because it's always this weird look, right? So what I wanted to share is that before the pandemic, I flew a lot, right? And I think that has changed a lot for us. And so a lot of the times on the plane, I had to explain that, I work for a Catholic healthcare organization, which would automatically say, oh, so you're a priest. And they'd start to say, oh, su merced, your mercy, I'm like, no, please stop calling me a priest. I'm not a priest. Behave, behave as you were, order another drink. Don't worry about it. Or the other thing is, they'd say, oh, mission integration. So you're in IT, right? And so tell me your greatest software needs or your cloud storage. And I'd say, really in my job, the only cloud storage that I'm interested in is, the cloud storage in the sky, with Jesus. I'm in Catholic healthcare. And so that's the cloud storage I'm interested in, not necessarily with the data, right? So I need to clarify that. So if there's anybody on here, please don't send me LinkedIn requests for an IT job, because I know how to turn on my computer, but that's as much as I can offer you. But nonetheless, I can help to connect you with people in IT if you need it. So I guess as I reflect on this, as you all, I'm sure, have to explain your roles at times, is that although maybe we might find these conversations tedious at times, and sometimes they were just funny, sometimes I'd say, okay, yeah, just think I'm a priest, for the rest of the flight. It was always a great opportunity to explain, to say, why is mission integration essential to healthcare and to all of healthcare, not just Catholic healthcare? And so I get to explain, it's important as you're looking at your own associates, at your caregivers, and how they're delivering care to our patients, to the people you serve. It's important that people are aligned to the mission and the values of the organization, right? So here at Christus, we talk about the Christus experience, that our consumers will interact with that. So part key to our Christus experience are how you will experience our mission and values when you come to any of our healthcare organizations in whatever country, whether you want Christus in the US or Christus in Latin America, right? We're going to receive you with that same experience. And so again, I feel that having people that are deeply rooted in your mission and values ensures the highest quality and compassionate care for all we serve. So now, Chris and Rodrigo, it's your turn. I've given my story, interested to hear about you all as well. So although I'm not going to give you the strange look that I usually get on these planes, or maybe I will give it to you, and I'll take off my glasses so I can see you all more directly. Wanted to see if you can share with the audience, and we're going to have a little bit more detailed questions, but I feel, we're in the NALHE DFW familia here, and we like to know one another and who we're speaking to. So if you all can take turns, we'll start with Rodrigo and kind of tell us a little bit about what it is that you do, why it's important in the healthcare industry. I think what's important for people on our call today, how was your career molded or shaped, that brought you to this part in your journey where you're kind of this leader in microbial disinfection, and for you, Chris, in healthcare support services. So I'll turn it over to you, Rodrigo.
Sure. Well, George, thanks for having me. I'm really grateful and excited to be here. I think to answer your question, as far as what we do, I mean, our tagline is keeping people safe. And I think lately there's been a lot more focus as it pertains to microbial safety in our world, more than most would have liked, I'm sure. But we're actually focused predominantly on healthcare-acquired infections or hospital-acquired infections. And this is a big problem. It's been a problem for a long time. 1 in 20 people, let's say, that have surgery, get an infection. There's studies that say that, nosocomial infections or healthcare-acquired infections are the 6th leading cause of death in the U.S. So this is a problem that we take seriously, as we value life, and that's kind of like our heart, or why we did this. There's nothing really special about what we do, but the process is innovative and it's very effective. As it pertains to your question, as far as what got us here, it was literally just being exposed to just something different, right? That looked like it could work. So we put in the work to validate that this was something real, and it just so happened that we were ready to launch right when COVID hit. So it's been a whirlwind for us. That's for sure.
Definitely. Yeah, I think we've all, as we were trying to strive to say, okay, where's the hand sanitizer? Where are all these things that we need to keep ourselves and our patients safe? I'm glad there was people out like you out in the front line ensuring that we had those essential elements for us to provide care. So thank you, Rodrigo, for sharing that. And now over to Chris. Chris, can you share a little bit about the same questions that with Rodrigo?
No, yeah, absolutely. Thank you, George, for hosting me today. So HHS, we're a support services provider. We're international. George, we serve Christus, JPS in the Dallas Metro. But, when you think about support services and you think about the back end of hospital operations, there's a lot of change that's going on in healthcare with COVID, where we sit today. Sitting in the administration side, the operations side at one point, we invest a lot of time in nursing policy. We invest a lot of time in physician practices, how we manage patient care. We don't always, and I'm not speaking for everybody, but we have organizations that don't do the research for EVS, dietary, patient transport, the non-clinical support services that, the backbone of the hospital that keep the front line going. And what we do at HHS is exactly that. We're the company that comes in, we're providing those services, but, outside of the hospital, we're continuously doing research, going to the different practices, innovation, new techniques to keep, the backbone of the hospital going, with current practices, current situations. So, what we do is exactly that. We come in, we analyze, we run, the back end of the operation so that administrators, physician, nursing care can focus on patient care, allowing us to focus on keeping them operational.
Thank you, Chris. Yeah, and I think, as you mentioned, the backbone of healthcare. I think in this time we've talked about our healthcare heroes and focusing on our nurses and doctors, which have done an amazing work. But I always think of our environmental services teams, people in our labs that were ensuring these safe environments for people to be able to come in to our organization. So definitely, I think they're one of the biggest healthcare heroes, and thank you for your organization for helping us plan proactively for that and to ensure safe environments for our community. Well, thank you both for giving us that introduction. And I'm just gonna, if let's pretend we're having a cup of coffee here, our noontime coffee, and just wanted to have kind of some dialogue with you about your career path and your journey, because I feel each of us has a story, right? And I think that's always how we're able to learn from one another and try to make our own plans. So I'll start off with you, Rodrigo. I know when we first started to talk about this, you talked about your early life and how that has helped to impact your business and the way that you lead. So can you tell us a little bit about how elements of your upbringing you've been able to incorporate into your leadership style? The
Sure.
work you're doing?
Yeah, George, that's a good question. I think that there's a lot of things that influence you as a leader when you're in that position, right? And it's funny. There's this saying that I learned a long time ago, especially during interviews. It was funny, we were talking about interviews earlier. We're like, all right, what's the difference between a leader and a manager? And the leader does things right, and the manager manages things well, right? Does the right thing. And they're related, but they're different. And I think from a leadership standpoint, doing the right thing is not always easy. And a lot of times it kind of bumps into change management. And for me, early on, one of the things I struggled with was kind of knowing what to do at work versus like what I would normally do at home or any other place that I was. So I think one of my biggest kind of accomplishments in terms of personal growth and development as it pertains to leadership was having what I call an integrated expression of faith. Like who I am at work is who I am at home, who I am at church, who I am, playing sports or whatever, right, at the gym. And that really resonates with people because some of the value tenets of that start playing into people having the disposition to listen to you, right? Knowing that you're there to also listen to them. So transparency is one of the things that, I learned early on that has influenced my leadership. The other things as far as upbringing, were experiential. I mean, I saw my parents come into this country and work extremely hard, harder than it makes sense to me now, right? But that taught me about work ethic, right? That taught me about attention to detail, quality, perseverance, having a spirit of excellence in what you do, because we needed to differentiate ourselves because we were trying to, grow, develop, right? And have a chance at the American dream. So I think that kind of bleeds into what now in our organization are central to what we do. We're people centric and we're purpose driven. And those are the value tenets that allow us to do what we do and to differentiate ourselves in the market.
Thank you, Rodrigo. And I think it's important to mention, you said a couple of key things, which I think is wonderful about your work. You're able to incorporate both your personal and your professional life. And I think that we're gifted as leaders as we think, about servant leadership. And so we're placed in these roles as leaders. We're blessed to be able to lead people, and how our focus always needs to be on how do we continue to build them up, right? How do we help them succeed? Because when they succeed, our organization succeeds. And I can imagine that a lot of people on our panel today, I myself from a family of immigrants, and like you said, when your family starts to get situated in the country, it's about the next step and the next step. Okay, you accomplished this, and so what's next for me? And so I look forward to the day when you can say, okay, I think I'm gonna relax a little bit right now, right? Because it's always kind of, how do I take it to that next level? But I think it also leads to why I'm sure you and Chris run excellent organizations because of that drive that you've been able to have and been instilled as a young person. So wanted to now jump to Chris, and we're just gonna go back and forth like
sure.
popcorn here. We'll popcorn back and forth. So Chris, as I went, as I looked at the summary of the work that you had done and kind of the various roles that you've had, you've been in healthcare in different ways, and you've been able to kind of pivot and transition. So can you tell us a little bit about how these experiences that you've had, how you've used those to guide you in the work that you do today?
Yeah, absolutely. George, I started off my career in the military. I was in 13 years doing military healthcare. About 7 years ago, I got out of the military and I came to Dallas, for opportunities and growth. And I had a mentor when I first left the market said, "Hey, you're kind of behind your peers because you spent 13 years in the military. A lot of your peers at your career age, they've done the associate administrator roles. They've managed inpatient, outpatient clinics." So I had to quickly jump on that, George, gaining experience on the clinical side, the acute, hospital setting, post-acute, vendor management. And, what I realized once in an interview, talking about that today, I had an interview, a recruiter talked to me about a role in Dallas, and she said, "Chris, for every COO job in Dallas, there's 65 quality candidates that make the initial screen. We screen anywhere from 200 to 400. And then, at the end of the day, we have 65 that are fully qualified, just like you. And out of the 65, narrow it down to about 5. And she said, in the metro, it's extremely competitive. There's alternative, paths to different, careers in healthcare. She said it very clearly. Hey, all paths lead to Rome. You just got to find the path to go on. And, and that soaked into my head, 3 years ago when I joined HHS. It was one of those things where, hey, I've had experience on all sides. I've learned a little bit about each sector of healthcare, in a very rapid time, but what do I enjoy the most? And, for me in the military, I enjoyed leading soldiers. I enjoyed leading the backbone of the military. And in healthcare, for me, the backbone is the support services folks, the team members that, don't get the recognition, that don't do the life-saving surgeries, but the folks that are there that are vital to day-to-day operations to keep, those frontline workers, those physicians, those surgeons, those key clinical leaders in front to save lives. And it was a calling for me 3 years ago coming into HHS, being around the teams that, the unsung heroes behind the scenes. But for me, it was learning a little bit about healthcare. I didn't jump straight into vendor management. I didn't jump straight into a certain way. I kind of ventured around, one of my great mentors who said, "Hey, learn as much as you can." And that's what I did. I took the last 7 years and I jumped around from inpatient, outpatient, clinical, just to kind of see what fit my style, what fit me. And, I'm very grateful that I found what I like, and that's what I'm doing. So.
Well, thank you, Chris. And I'll do a follow-up question to that, right? You mentioned that you were able to move and kind of see how things were building up on one another. Just wanted to get a sense, if you were to say, for our younger folks, I always joke and say, well, we're young, but I'm like, well, I'm middle-aged now, right? So I need to start preparing for the next generation, right?
Sure.
So if you reflect on kind of what were those skill sets, if you were to think about, like, what were those 2 or 3 skill sets that you felt that you had that allowed you to kind of be able to pivot so seamlessly, right, to all these different roles?
Yeah, the top 3 that I use, when I mentor younger, younger graduates, folks that are, that entry level role is you got to have the soft skills. Soft skills will win the battle 100% of the time. Can you talk to people and be effective in your communication? And, you can get every graduate degree out there, but if you don't have the soft skills, you're going to struggle. The second thing is, people management. You got to get out there. You can't be afraid to manage people. And the third one is financial management. Can you balance your P&L? Can you run it regardless of the size of the department? Did you run it effectively? Were you positive in your financials? Was your retention great? And then, on top of that, the soft skills. I think if you do that very well at the entry level, that'll set up your career to be able to pivot in-house, post-acute, and in whatever setting you want, entrepreneurship, running your own business, kind of, what Rodrigo does. I mean, there's many ways out there. The misconception I think we get in graduate school, for a lot of the C-suite, future C-suite leaders is, hey, you get your MBA, you get your MHA. The only thing a lot of young leaders see is I'm a future CEO, and that's the way I'm going. And then with experience, you kind of realize there's many roads that'll take you back to a CEO position. It might not be an acute hospital, but there's many other opportunities if you're willing to just listen and look out there. So George, to answer your question, those three things: hey, learn the soft skills, learn the financial management, the people management, and that'll allow you to have a fruitation career where you're able to go out and do different things and be successful.
Yeah, and Chris, I think, the things that you mentioned, we always talk about within our organization, stewardship. And so sometimes we tend to go to just the financial perspective and say, as you mentioned, that you do need to have that financial knowledge, how to manage and balance your budgets. But what I like about what you mentioned is kind of your people management skills as well, right? Is how are you able to do that? Because at the end of the day, you might have all these financial resources, but our people are really the greatest asset and resource that we have within an organization. And I also like about your approach about the soft skills, because there is also that self-awareness that we need to have and say, okay, how am I interacting? How are people engaging with me and receiving the information that I'm giving? So I think those are all some great elements that you've been able to highlight for us. So thank you, Chris.
Oh, thanks, George.
Well, Rodrigo, back to you, in your introduction. So Chris said, people are looking to become the CEO, right? When they're getting their degrees. Well, you became the CEO, right? So you were able to get to that path. So congratulations.
Thank you.
You mentioned that your business or your organization came about just at the right time, right? As COVID was happening. So can you tell us a little bit more about kind of how did the idea come about and your thought process to be able to make it happen?
Sure. It's funny. Chris is right. From his advice, I mean, people skills are some of the things that are some of the hardest things to develop, and especially if you're an introvert like me. I walk into a room full of strangers, I see a risk, not opportunity, and that's something you have to work through because I'm only as good as my team. And so you managing is about your team. It's not about you. And it takes a level of humility and intentionality that sometimes is hard earned, but it's necessary. And, what was interesting about, how we came about this business model was honestly just being exposed to technology. Right, we were exposed to something that worked so well, but was still kind of so different than what was going on in healthcare. A lot of times, as it pertains to disinfection, right? In healthcare, it was disruptive. I don't know, UV robots or fogging. Everybody has to get out, right? Because those modalities are toxic. And we found out that there was a non-toxic alternative. Right, and a way to measure effectiveness, which you spoke to earlier, George, transparency, and we're introducing that into healthcare. We're testing and establishing kind of, hey, what's going on here? Well, who's here at the party as far as microbes are concerned, but then we're addressing it and we're then validating that what we did worked. And you know what? That's just not innovation in healthcare. That's something that works everywhere in life. It's just like checking your homework when you're submitting a test. It's like check your work. Did you do it correctly, right? Is there a measurable, is there a key performance indicator of effectiveness and efficacy around what you're putting forth? And that's what we saw early on with the technology. But I mean, our modality is straightforward. We test, disinfect, and verify. I mean, that's our model. It's not something crazy. But providing visibility in healthcare is something that is innovative as it pertains to microbial contamination. And that's what's kind of like making us different, notwithstanding of the fact that we're minimally invasive to the operation. And Chris can speak to that because, he is the backbone of that hospital. There's so many people that, do different things that allow hospital to run. And, he definitely has a PhD in that run. But we're kind of like, if you think about it, a tag team, disinfection, is different as it pertains to kind of like the clinical nature of understanding what organisms exist in a particular healthcare environment and how you can solve for them and mitigate, hospital-acquired infections.
Yeah, and as we look at how we prevent and we look at that, when we've all been using our own little our low-tech barriers that we know have helped to prevent that. Yeah. A lot of the spread, but thankful that there's this additional layer that's been able to keep us safe. And I think it's important where you mentioned too, is looking for those non-toxic alternatives, because you can't empty the hospital, right? Everybody get out because we're gonna throw a tent over it and then come back in a few days. No, you have to do that, and then also look at environmentally safe products, which I know as we look to care for our Mother Earth and our environment, it's important for us to be able to continue to look at these alternatives that are green alternatives that allow us to maintain a safe environment. Rodrigo, one of the things, so it's great you were able to come up with this model and we're able to execute on it. For some people on here today, they might be thinking like, hey, I like what Rodrigo did. I want to start my own business as well, because he did it so well and he made it sound so easy. So come on, I'm going to go out and start my organization tomorrow. So just wondering if you could tell us, as you reflect on your journey and starting your company, what would you say are the top 3 skills needed to be a successful entrepreneur?
Sure. I'll list them and then I'll dive in. For me, number 1, fail fast. Really fast. Number 2, recover well. And then 3, listen to people. Failure is necessary in any type of innovation or leadership position. Most of us, I don't know about you guys are probably a lot smarter than me, but I learn usually through pain, and that's the way that I learned. I don't like pain, but that's just the way it rolls, right? But I don't stay there, right? So number 2 is recover fast. I mean, there should be some intentionality and thought process around how you recover. And that's how I believe we all learn, right? But based on best practices that we start learning, we repeat and expand on those best practices and test, right? And that interaction, Chris was mentioning earlier, about interacting with people. I mean, that's what segues into my 3rd recommendation. You have to listen to people. A lot of times you have a great idea, right? But it's here, it's high level, it's strategic, right? But implementing, right, that use case and validating that, requires people. It requires for you to interact with different stakeholders and have the humility and intentionality to ask them, hey, what do you think? How did this work, right? Are we meeting, right, your expectations, or are we south of them? How can we then kind of reflect on those failures, right, as we listen to people and under promise and over deliver. And that is in part of life. It's part of relationships. If you think of the good relationships you have in life, those are people that are not perfect, but those are people that when and if they fail you, they recover, right? They say, hey, you know what? I own it. I'm sorry. How can I make this better? And the relationship kind of shifts, right? In a positive light. It's different than it was before, but it's because you have that historical context. And the same thing in business. In business, we're here to solve problems. And in healthcare, we solve problems that actually save lives, right? So that is the correlation for us, right? And the recommendation for me, if you're thinking of an executive role, in healthcare, a lot of the times it's about how are you going to solve this problem? How are you going to interact, like Chris was saying, with people that need to listen to what you have to say to give you a shot? And, communication dynamics apply. It's not just in, soft skills as far as interpersonal dynamics, but also in how you communicate benefit and value as it pertains to marketing, brand, the culture you're developing, and how, you're going to make it a great place for people to work for.
Yeah, definitely. And, Rodrigo, what I like about your approach, like you were saying, we don't like pain, so we want to get through that the fastest way, but it's better for it to hurt at the beginning than already be close to the end, right? But I think what's key to what you're sharing is to recover well, right? Because I think sometimes from those mistakes, I feel innovation comes from that, new ideas, and we could be creative to be able to figure out how to best meet the needs of our consumers. And so I think that's great. You know, there was that old song back in my day. I think her name was Aaliyah, the singer. If at first you don't succeed, dust yourself off and try again, right? So I think we have to. So I've dated myself. I've tried it, but you know, I remember that. Yeah, we have to dust ourselves off and continue to move forward and coming back to our people. So thank you, Rodrigo.
Absolutely. And I think if I can interject there, you reminded me to something. I mean, a lot of times people see you when you fail. And you think that if you want to influence people, you influence people through your failure, not your success. How you recover speaks to people as far as like how you roll, your integrity, the type of person you are. And a lot of times people can relate to that more than any positive, you know, perfect looking thing that you got going. So I think if I wanted to mention that it's important.
Yeah, definitely. Well, Chris, coming back to you, and you know, you guys have been working so great off of each other. Rodrigo helped give me my segue to you now, because it sounds in both of what you all have shared, how you treat your people, the relationships that you built are key in any work that we do. And so I know for myself, me and my colleague, my neighbor, Marco, sits on the other side of me, and he says, "You guys are a little chatty sometimes. You're like, you guys are always talking to people." And he said, "No, we're strategic. We're building relationships because we can follow up with these people later and say, hey, last time we were talking about your cute new puppy, but hey, can you help me with this initiative now, because we have a relationship now, right?" And it's through those relationships and establishing them that we're able to advance our work. So I always say it's my strategic chatting that I do to advance the work that we do. So if I were to kind of ask you to tell me about what are those relationships as you reflect on your journey and your path, if you were to think one or two relationships that were key to your success today.
Yeah, you know, so I think for me, it's mentorship in the direction you want to go. I had a hospital, a market CEO who brought me on early on, you know, when I first left the military and joined corporate healthcare, who gave me the vision for hospital leadership. You know, this is what you need to be successful, you know, of operations on this side of the fence. And then, you know, for me, the other was a mentor who was not in my field, someone who was in a totally different field, who also planted the seed of vision. You know, you can't just see tunnel vision. You know, there's many ways to see this. And, you know, what he provided me was that vision to be able to see full circle. You know, and at that point, I had two references that I thought were very solid. One that was teaching me, you know, one way to build myself up into a career inside the hospital, and one that was giving me alternative visions. You know, and when you mix both together, you have a better field of vision. So, you know, for me, if I were to tell, you know, some of our junior leaders on the chat today, you know, what when you're out there looking for peers and mentors, people that are going to help guide you, you know, don't go pick 3 CEOs of a hospital and say, hey, these are the top 3 guys I want to use. You don't be afraid to pick one, but also look for others that might not be in your field that might be able to help you to give you a better global vision outside of just, you know, the 4 walls of the hospital. So, you know, for me, that's what's been very impactful, you know, being able to find leaders, not in my field, but in other sectors that have ideas, that see things that we might not see, or be able to give me insight on things we don't learn in our textbooks going through our MBA or MHA program. So, yeah, that's the advice I would give, you know, the folks on this call today is, you know, don't be that junior leader that's just looking for 3 CEOs or 2 CEOs and a CNO. You know, venture out, look for other leadership, you know, people like yourself, George, that are at the corporate office, you know, seeing the big picture and not just the local picture. It always goes a long way.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it's always having that diversity, right? The diversity
right.
in your networks to be able to understand those realities, because I think sometimes we create such a if it's only CEOs, we're only getting that CEO perspective. And sometimes it's a little bit harder to kind of put that mirror in front of your face and say like, okay, well, I'm only seeing it this way, but how does this frontline associate or employee may be looking at things that we might need to be responding or shifting?
Absolutely, George. You got to climb the ladder. To get to the top, you got to climb the ladder. And if your mentors are all, folks that have climbed the ladder, you sometimes tend to forget the steps that it took to get there. So diversification, looking for others that are outside of just that role. I mean, that'll help you, build your career, build your timeline to climb that ladder.
Yeah. Thank you. Well, thank you both for your very thoughtful responses to these questions. I think for anybody looking, wherever they are in their career, at the beginning, at the middle, or towards the end, I think that what you've been able to share today is extremely helpful. As we reflect and realize that it's a constant growth. We're called to continually grow and develop to be able to meet the needs and realities of today. And so I'll do just one last question for you. I mentioned we all face some very difficult realities over this past year, and just wanted to hear from you personally in terms of how have you managed to thrive in this current environment, right? I think there, as we always say, there was some very hard parts about COVID, but then there's also been some blessings or some new realities for us. So what have those been for you?
Well, I guess I'll go. George, for me, it's being flexible. Don't become so rigid that you're not flexible in the current situation. And that means with anything, if you're at a point where your leader's asking you to do something additional to help and serve the team, don't go back to, well, it's not my job description, I'm not doing it. Be able to be flexible, be able to be a servant leader, and know that as we go through this difficult period, there's going to be different things that might be asked, just so that overall, you're transparent and you're fluid to change. And if you're flexible and you're fluid to change, there's nothing that will stop you today. So that's for me.
Being flexible so you don't break, right?
There you go.
Yeah.
How about you?
Sure. For me, I guess within my role, it's been a little bit about just reminding me of the importance of critical thinking. I think a lot of us have undergone undue stress because we feel that, a lot of the fear around the pandemic, forced us to do things that were extremely uncomfortable. And I think that keeping the dialogue going around and asking questions, a lot of times as you're solving problems, I recommend asking, why 5 times, right? And that's usually very helpful to get to a root cause. But it also helps you kind of bring yourself alive to kind of be present in that moment. And like Chris was mentioning, then be apt to be a team player, to kind of morph and weave and move through the what feels like opposition. But as it pertains to kind of like how COVID affected, our organization, man, it was a challenge, honestly, because, a lot of people are chasing COVID in my world, and we exist to mitigate hospital-acquired infections. It just so happens that COVID is a bug, but it's an easy bug to kill in my world. All right, there's a lot more things that historically have truly burdened, right, hospital environments, especially, and threatened people's lives that are way more dangerous than COVID. Right. But it is the political environment that we live in right now. So a lot of times speaking truth and love is part of my motto as it pertains to COVID. Right now, we're kind of climbing out of a lot of things. There's things changing, but it's still a challenge, right? It's still a challenge. It's extremely disruptive to operations, not just in healthcare, but in our whole economy. So I think a lot of times, again, just having critical thinking, plays a key role in helping us kind of like innovate, but also persevere through some of the change management that's imposed upon us.
Yeah, definitely. Well, listen, thank you so much for your time today. I was texting my colleagues, tell me because I get too chatty, so text me to be quiet. It was a bit too chatty, so I'm obviously not an introvert. I'm an extrovert. But just wanted to say thank you for people listening. I know Rodrigo and Chris, I know we'll have their information available if you want to reach out to them directly and kind of continue to hear from them, and how I think, we have two amazing mentors with us today for those of you that are exploring different options in your career. So as promised, so I'll take back my my strange look face on you, because now I understand what you do. So I'll take my strange look and I'll do my happy face, right? So thank you so much for sharing about your work. It's been so helpful, and I hope that will also be inspiring to people as they seek their career path. So for people on this call, I'm the board treasurer, so we need your membership as part of NALHE Dallas Fort Worth. So I would like to encourage you, if you liked what you heard today, please make sure you join our NALHE DFW chapter. And if my colleague Lori can maybe put in the website in the comment section for you all to clear, but we're always looking for amazing members. And look, if you join NALHE, you'll have amazing people like Rodrigo, like Chris, and like Lori, and all these amazing people that are contributing to helping to build the future of healthcare. So please go ahead and do that. And so as we wrap up, again, want to thank you all that have been on today for supporting the National Association of Latino Healthcare Executives in Dallas Fort Worth. We hope to continue to engage with you, and we're hopeful for the day. Hopefully this fall we'll be able to hold another social and be able to engage with each other safely. And if you're concerned, I'm sure Rodrigo and Chris will ensure that the environment is completely safe for us to be able to have this event. So thank you so much both for your time. I really appreciate it.
All right, y'all.
Thanks, George.
Thank you.
Oh, wow. That was such an amazing session. I enjoyed hearing all of the feedback. In fact, I received this comment in the chat section from Carmen Rodriguez, and it was just kind of explaining how good of a session that was. She wrote, "Agree with all that you said, Rodrigo. Learn from your failures and mistakes. Surround yourself with people that compliment, and not only the ones that compliment you, and people that you can learn from." Ooh, such deep takeaways. Love that. So we're in for a treat. Our next session is about establishing your executive presence. And we have, again, some phenomenal speakers that are within the community and are willing to share their wisdom with us and let us know what we need to do to establish their executive presence. So with me, I'd like to introduce Maria. Maria is, hello, Maria.
Hello.
Maria is a Chief Financial Officer, and her full name is Maria Valdez Powell. Maria, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure, thank you. And thank you for having me. A little bit about myself. I have been in the healthcare field for many, many, many years. Don't want to date myself, but certainly on the other side, if you will. Started my career back in the 80s and have held various roles in healthcare, several chief financial officer roles, as well as vice president of physician operations. So my expertise does fall into the physician side of the business, working with physician groups. I have worked with large healthcare systems, national healthcare systems in the country. I've also done a lot of consulting and certainly favor the physician side of the world. I did start off in hospitals early in my healthcare career, but did find the niche again on the physician side. So come with finance and operations experience, as well as a lot of consulting in all areas in the healthcare arena.
Maria, it is so fantastic for you to be a part of this program. We do not see a lot of chief financial officers that are females, and then to be a female Latina as well. So the statistics, it just continually drops down. So you're a wonderful inspiration for people who may be considering leadership roles and finance. So I really appreciate you being here with us today.
Well, thank you. And I'm looking forward to it. Thanks so much.
We also have with us Lisa Buffler. Lisa Buffler, she works and she connects with many different people in the community and helps to place them in the role that was meant to be. Lisa, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, yes, my name is Lisa Buffler. It's so funny because my full name is actually Lisa Valdez Buffler.
Oh, wow.
So,
Am I in the Valdez?
Fun
That's
fact.
great.
So I have been recruiting for over 25 years and have been in the people business for 25 years. And so that is my passion and what I enjoy doing. I take pride in all of that, and I enjoy being able to place people, the right people in the right roles for the right organizations. And so it's been a pleasure for the last few years to be able to do that. So very exciting. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. I'm very excited to have both of you here with us today. One thing I see is we all bring this different generational wealth of knowledge and wisdom. And I know that we've all kind of experienced different things in our career. So I think this is going to be a very interesting discussion as we talk about establishing executive presence. Maria, could you explain exactly what is executive presence?
Absolutely. So for me, what executive presence is, and again, thank you again for giving me this opportunity. I had to sit back and kind of go back through my career as to when did I establish executive presence and what did it mean to me. But executive presence is those that have the confidence, and usually, it's at all levels, but those that have the confidence that walk into a room, have the expertise, the knowledge, the communication skills to convey the subject matter at hand, and they have the respect of those that are listening to them. And again, one builds their executive presence, I believe, and it can start at a very young age. But it is all on how you communicate and carry yourself, and the respect that you draw from others. To me, it defines executive presence.
Awesome, Lisa. What would you add that you see in others as they present executive presence?
I agree with everything that Maria said. I think that in establishing that executive presence, you bring your confidence with you, and it shows, and your expertise, like Maria said. So I think I think she summed it up really well.
Okay, I'm going to try to bring my confidence and my expertise, and hopefully I do a good job. Now, I know that culturally, sometimes confidence is something hard because in some cultures, people aren't taught to be strong, and they're taught to accept certain things that are presented to them. What techniques do you do in order to exude confidence? Maria, do you have any examples for us?
Absolutely. So once again, it is knowing that subject matter at hand and becoming an expert. So as we build upon our careers, it's always looking for growth opportunities. And we continue to learn, right, throughout our careers, and we learn from others. And so I would say, what builds confidence is Again, knowing that subject matter, the way you present yourself, also a calmness, if you will, showing that bit of calmness to others, is what I would say.
I love that. I recently read an article not too long ago that says when right before you're about to give a presentation, that you should do like a superwoman pose, and that this type of pose just kind of lets you know you're ready to take on the world, and it helps you bring in that confidence that you need to do. Lisa, do you have any additional tips for us? And
I definitely think asking questions. I'm a question asker. It's the why, the how, and it's with every aspect. So you have to look outside of your own scope of work and see how your scope of work interacts with a different department. So in HR, there's so many different branches, and it's really easy to get siloed into your own world. But when you start looking outside of your world and how what you do affects others and what they do affects somebody else, it just really expands your knowledge and gives you that confidence to be able to speak on a subject.
Why do you need executive presence? Like, can't people just accept you for the great work that you do? Lisa?
That would be great. That would be wonderful in the ideal world.
I mean, if the work presents all the boxes, check. Why can't that just be enough?
I think people by nature are just leery. And it's just human nature that, they don't want to jump into something that's not known. And that includes a partnership with a person, and confidence in what they're saying is fact or accurate. And so you need that executive presence to be able to build those relationships, and you can't build those relationships without faith, and they can't build that faith until you prove it to them. So, yeah.
I really like this question that just came to us live from Arturo. Thank you so much, Arturo. He says, how can one ensure that they aren't overly confident?
Yeah.
What would you guys say about that?
So for me, that's an interesting question, because I also believe that for leaders to succeed, there needs to be a humbleness. And that too indicates executive presence. And so when we deal with those type of leadership styles that are very pompous or overly confident, they can certainly lose their audience very quickly. And so again, if we're comfortable with the subject matter, we're comfortable with ourselves, we're comfortable where we are in our careers, I believe that is what, those are the major areas that one needs to succeed. And to me, that does not define overconfidence. It again defines the right amount of confidence that a leader needs to succeed. But again, when we start getting egotistical, again, pompous, things of that sort, that is where we can, certainly see some overconfidence, and that type of leadership style loses, I believe, the audience very quickly.
Yeah.
Lisa, what would you add to that?
I think that you can be confident and humble at the same time. I'm 100% confident in what I do, but I will listen and hear what other people have to say. If there's something I want to add to it, then I will. Or maybe what they're saying gives me a whole new perspective. So you just have to be open and not be, well, I already know it all kind of attitude. It's a fine line.
It is definitely a fine line. And I think as we're trying to establish ourselves, I know my own experience of becoming a leader is I look to others for that confidence. And what do women leaders look like? How do women leaders lead and take presence in the workplace? And so I think that's a really good question of if we are perceived one way, and this is coming from Christy Newton, can you recover or change your perception of you are currently not perceived as having that executive presence?
I'll have to say, I think it's very hard to come back from a first impression. I've seen people that I know are great and do, but they don't make a really good first impression, and it's not impossible to come back from it. It's just really, really hard to do.
For me, I would say that it is possible. And again, it goes back to the fact of an individual wanting to change. And again, it goes back to the humbleness, because if they're humble, they're going to recognize the mistakes that have been made. And so to recover or change that perception, I do think it would take somebody sitting down and obtaining feedback from others that could assist them on what is needed in order to change the perception. Also, I believe you have to be a good listener. And if you sit back and just listen, and others observe that you're listening, not always having to have the answer, but you listen first, I think that's the first step in changing a perception that may have had a negative impact on an individual. But I do think it's possible to recover. And because if the individual wants to recover, they want it bad enough, they certainly can achieve that by obtaining, again, that guidance from others, and to have executive presence. I think it's very important to have that coaching and mentorship from others that have achieved it, that you surround yourself with those leaders that have achieved executive presence. You learn from them. And what do they do that when they walk in a room, people listen, people respect them. And part of it is just how they treat others.
Yeah. I really agree a lot with that statement on, I do feel that you can change the perception for executive presence. I know I have friends that were shy about public speaking, and so they went and took a Toastmasters class and to kind of build that confidence. And I think sometimes culture can help influence the way we lead, and being exposed to different types of cultures and the way that they lead is also something that can help to build that executive presence, because I think some cultures are feel that if they do good work that they will be rewarded. And unfortunately that doesn't work the same way in America. And we kind of have to learn, how do we showcase ourselves and kind of go with the flow in the environment that we're already in. Well, Lisa, it looked like you wanted to add something.
I do. I just to kind of piggyback off of what Maria said, because she's absolutely right. I think one way also is the ownership of whatever that impression was, is to say, maybe I didn't do that the best way, or that didn't come out the way I wanted it to, but it's taking full ownership of it and not making excuses for it, just taking ownership of it.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So let's kind of go through, I know that when people are becoming leaders, that there is, that they're being exposed to a lot of different things, and they're trying to figure out exactly how do they themselves lead. I'll tell you a personal story of mine. When I was, I first did an internship, I saw this beautiful wonderful lady who was leading. She just demanded executive presence. And to me, I was defining executive presence is when she came in the room, you knew that she was in the room. You knew that the amount of admiration and respect, it was just completely there. She dressed in these beautiful business suits, and she had a sharp walk with her. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I love this air that she brings. I want to bring this too. And I mean, I tried. I mean, I'm like, okay, I got to get the business suits. Check. I have to walk a certain way. Check. I have to be a certain way. And then I realized that as much as I admired her, that executive presence comes in different ways. And that just because she leads this way, which was a way that I didn't actually feel as comfortable with, Lori, myself, I could lead a different way. So my question to you is, how have you transformed in your career to kind of establish your own executive presence?
Yeah. So I think that's a great question, because as we build upon our careers, and if I look back at my career, I became a leader early on, soon after I started my career, and I started my career as an accountant and moved up the ranks, if you will, to an accounting manager quite quickly, and then continued moving on from that. So who I led when I first started my career is a different level than what I lead today. And so I think also it's important for a leader with their style and their executive presence. You also, you need it to fit that team that you're leading at that time, because what the team I led early on and what I shared with them and taught them and prepared them for their own careers is not the same way I'm going to lead today. So again, as a leader, you develop that executive presence, that leadership style that fits the team that you're leading at the current time. And you have to feel comfortable with it as well. So, you know, perhaps the executive presence I held early on in my career would be very different than it is today. And it adapts. It adapts to who my audience is, if you will. But it's genuine. Most importantly, you want your executive presence to be genuine, because that says who you are.
I want to expound a little bit on that. Because I think when I was growing up, I saw women lead a little bit differently than I see them lead today. I feel like there was this change and shift, and that this is kind of reflected how women lead in the workplace. So even in the dress code, I believe it was probably like the 1980s where people were wearing like skirts and dresses and
every day
underwear pants.
Yes.
And then there was even a period of people just wearing pants. So, and Maria, you're kind of in a place where it's predominantly men. So how do you, as women, how do you gain respect in the workplace and lead right alongside men? So I think men are wonderful to work with. So I just want to know, because it's a pretty much a rare situation to have a female chief financial officer. So I'm very curious about your role.
Well, thank you. So I would say for me, I am known to have a direct personality. I certainly get the message across. But again, it goes back to how it's conveyed, and as long as it's conveyed professionally. I also have a very strong moral compass. Integrity and ethics are certainly the most important to me. And as you can imagine, you know, I do have a CPA certification. And then again, being in the field that I am in, it does follow integrity and ethics. So it goes back to, for me, and it's been this way throughout my entire career, is that the way I convey my messages, it has been direct. I don't sugarcoat, but I've always been extremely honest, and I'm a big communicator. If I see an issue, I do not hesitate to present the issue at hand. I also have resolution. So if I'm going to present an issue, I do come immediately with, this is how we can resolve it. And I believe, again, that's been throughout my entire career. And I do believe that is one of the strengths that I hold, is that I'm not concerned to communicate directly or share issues. And I believe that draws respect as well. I know throughout my career, I've worked for one large healthcare company twice. I was called back. And then throughout my career, I've had other leaders call me to say, I would love for you to come and work for me because I trust you. And so I think that's a lot of it too, as we work in this industry. And again, yes, being a female, you have to develop that trust with your colleagues, if you will.
I love that. Trust. How do you develop that trust? That's a really good question. What would you say? What would you say to that? How do you develop that trust?
So for me, it is again, having all your facts. You stick to facts. So when you're describing any type of issue or any subject matter at hand, you have the knowledge, the facts, and you deliver. I think to develop that trust, it's very important that what you say that you're going to do, that you deliver. Okay. So again, as you've mentioned, I mean, some folks can certainly do all the work, but if they didn't communicate it appropriately, or they can do the work, but if they're not, meeting their deadlines, if you will, and delivering the task at hand, then I believe colleagues begin to lose trust in the individual.
Okay. Lisa, what would you add to that?
I definitely agree. It's trust. I think that to be able to build that trust, you have to do what you say. And if not 100% of the time, the majority of the time. And if you can't do what you say, you communicate it well in advance, not the day that it's due, or, you communicate it and said, I can't get this done or whatever. But communication is going to be a big part of that trust. Honesty. I know Maria had mentioned her integrity and her moral compass. You have to. To be honest with yourself, you have to have that integrity, and to be able to move forward, to be able for me, for a woman to be successful, she has to be honest with herself. And if she's not, then it just makes everything else in life hard.
Definitely. I love that. To be honest with yourself. Yeah. And when I think about executive presence, I have a friend of mine who, he was in the military, and he would say to me, begin with the end in mind. And begin with the end in mind. And as I go through my career, I hear him telling me these words. And I was trying to figure out what exactly he meant when he said it. And as I played it back in my head, what I understood from it was that a lot of times, if you don't have the end in mind, you can go all over the place and not really lead directly with your mission in place. And he said, Lori, what I learned from the military life was that we begin with the end in mind. We have a mission. And we know that when we start this conversation or this form of communication, that we have a goal that we're trying to get to. And so it's about being calm and kind of handling this in such an executive manner of coming to the table with solutions, like Maria said, you know, and really kind of being in the moment and solving those problems. What other tips would you recommend?
And I think Maria said this as well, is listening. You have to listen. If you don't listen, you don't know what the person talking to you is wants or needs, or what they want from you. But you know, executive presence to me, it's just a combination of so many things. You mentioned the leader that you saw early in your career that was, you know, just powerful as she walked into the room, the outfit, the clothes, and she just commanded that. It comes in so many different forms, because I can tell you mine is almost opposite. I mean, I will walk into a room and people will respect what I say, but I'm kind of a wallflower. I'm in the background. But people will turn around and ask me a question. So it's not always just the loudest person in the room. It's just the person that people have, you've built a trust with, you've built a relationship with them, and so it can come in so many different forms. So you don't always have to be the loudest. I had a partner who, at work, she was the loudest person, and everybody knew she was there, and she was respected. But I'm the exact opposite, and I have the same respect. So you just have to be really, really honest with yourself and say it's okay to be different.
It's okay to be different. I like that.
Yeah.
And I like your example regarding people who are a wildflower or maybe even shy, you know, can also possess executive presence. And I think that is sometimes very hard for people to understand, that leadership comes in different forms. We all come from different cultures and different backgrounds. The way people raise their children in their home and kind of create their own home leaders before they even get into the workplace really varies. But you know what? Everybody is raising successful families, and everyone is coming over and to the workplace and has that possibility to also lead in the healthcare industry or any industry with that movement forward. You mentioned, and I just kind of wanted to just dive into that a little bit, but shyness. I love Simon Sinek. He is a wonderful author. It's Leaders Eat Last, several of his books. And what I love about Simon is actually shy, and he talks about being quiet. And he kind of did this whole little series where he was kind of like, can leaders who are shy still lead? And he says yes. And the reason why he says yes is because he says they offer excellent listening skills. And it's like they understand and they study the room in such a way that by the time it is their turn to speak, they have quite a lot to say. So I guess one question I have, because I know you guys both have different leadership styles, but if the person that you're mentoring possesses shyness, what advice would you give them in order to kind of help them combat the environment that they're going into? let's say it's an early careerist that's just trying to come out. What do you guys say to them?
So for me, what I would say is, and maybe I wouldn't use the word shyness, maybe I'd use an introvert, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And what I would say is it's okay. It's okay to be the quiet one in the room, because it's exactly how you described it. I'm an introvert, and it's exactly what you said. I'm sitting observing. So then I get all my facts, and then I know what I need to contribute. But what my advice would be to someone early on in their career, and again, it goes back to helping them also build that confidence. It goes back to saying, as long as you know your subject matter, that way when you do speak, you are listened to. And for those that don't speak often, part of me says that they're listened to more for the mere fact that they don't speak often.
Mm-hmm.
And so when they do have something to say, I believe that they are listened to.
It's funny, Maria. It just makes me laugh because my son plays travel baseball, and we had a parent meeting about one of our trips or something, and they were talking about something, and parents were disagreeing. They were going back and forth and everything. And so I listened to both sides, and then it got quiet, and I said, well, and the minute I said, well, I mean, everybody turned around, got like pitch quiet. I'm like, never mind, I don't have anything to say.
That's
like,
great.
what's going on? Yeah,
That's great. Well,
what happens. Yeah.
And I love the stat that's showing up. But one thing I heard about, and this is, again, I'm just very grateful for the opportunity that you've given me to be on this panel, because it's made me think throughout my career of various experiences I had. But in one particular instance, I reported up to the chief operating officer of a large healthcare system, national healthcare system. And when we would all meet, I would sit in the back of the room. And she, spoke to me after, and it was early on when I first joined the organization. And she said, Maria, she said, why do you sit in the back of the room? You should be sitting in the front. And I said, but you know what? I don't need to be in the front, because it goes back again to my leadership and my personality. I don't have to be in the front. I'm perfectly fine in the back because I'm listening. And for me, and in my career, I don't have to be the center of attention, because that's not executive presence. Because it goes back to, what are you going to deliver? How do you carry yourself? Are you professional? We talked a little bit about appearance. I believe that for executive presence, you have to dress the part. So, that's what I would say in regards to that.
I think everybody's heard that phrase, dress for the job you want, not for the job you have. I think everybody's heard that. And my mentor taught me that early in my career, in my 20s. This is dress for the job you want, not for the job you have. So
I love that. I think when I was starting my career, actually before I was starting my career, I loved business suits. And so my mother would take me to the store. Like, this is when I was in high school, and I'm picking up like Casper suits and everything. And I'm like, I'm getting my wardrobe now. Really kind of preparing for that. So when I actually did have events and I would wear these business suits, people would look at me and they'd be like, you're wearing this outfit? Like, and I'm like, yes, I'm ready, just kind of being on. But I definitely do think that the way you dress, it kind of presents a level of respect. You respect yourself, and then others will also respect you. Mm-hmm. Now, we did just go through a pandemic where I'm sure there were some little hiccups in people's dress, because salons were closed. People just didn't have the same amount of resources. So I think this brings a very interesting point, because we had to start using Zoom, and we had to present this different executive presence, because instead of walking into a boardroom, we're in a Zoom room. So what examples of executive presence have you guys seen on Zoom?
I think it goes back to the same from an appearance perspective. You certainly, need to dress up. You're on camera. And again, for me, I followed much of what I've always followed. Even though I was on Zoom, I wasn't going to be the one to be talking the most, etc. So for me, it didn't change much. Being on Zoom, you still, have to know your subject matter. You still respect others, for sure, right? Allow others to speak, even though you're on camera. So it didn't change much for me.
I think the pandemic brought all kinds of new challenges, I guess, to a workplace. But for me, one thing I noticed early was you were able to get more out of a conversation with somebody, whether it's a meeting or one-on-one, if your cameras were on. The cameras off makes it just so easy for somebody to be disconnected, not at their terminal, especially if it's a group meeting, not really present and really listening. So I think that was something that I recommended early on, is that if we have a group meeting, I really would like to see you. We don't get to see people anyway. We're all stuck in our house, early on in the pandemic. And so I can't see you in person like we did before. But I think with the not being able to view people all the time, it really created some new challenges in the workplace. And so I think being available, even if it's on video, where they could actually see you, makes a big difference.
Okay. I like what you guys are saying in regards to that. I was actually watching Minda Harts, and she does a live session, and she's actually wrote some really good books as well. And one of the things that she was saying as we were going through this pandemic, and hopefully trying to look presentable in the workplace, whether it be on Zoom or in person, she said there are a lot of people that are not putting on their cameras. When you put on your camera, people will see you as a leader, because you're putting on your camera. And just that alone kind of creates its own executive presence. And so I thought that was a good fact, because I think in a lot of times, the question mark of is, can I be seen? Will I be seen? There's so many different leaders that if we don't showcase ourselves and who we are, then we never get seen. And so if you have an opportunity to turn on your camera and to engage with what's being done, then it showcases that you're here, you're in the game, you're willing to do the work, and you're willing to lead effectively. Now, the other note is, don't come with your pajamas on. I've seen accidentally, I'm like, oh my gosh, they must not know that camera went on. And, and it's embarrassing, because you're like, okay, so you didn't come to work today. Because literally all you have to do is come top up, right? And so if you want to wear pajama pants, that's fine. But your top half, you have to be ready to shine, ready to go, and just be a great leader.
Yeah. My son gets a kick out of it sometimes when I have a meeting, because I do have sweatpants on some meetings and a jacket, and he's like, what are you doing? It's like, I've got a meeting I've got to go to. So
we have a comment from Cheryl. She
Mhm.
says, as a leader, those that you are leading have to believe that you care about them.
Mhm.
As building plans, you have to take in consideration that it's not an individual project any longer. There are many areas to address that are crucial for a leader to be successful. And I love that, right?
Mhm.
I mean, what she's talking about is leading others. Like, I have to know that you care.
yes.
That is
So,
so true. So, so true.
Yeah.
And as I shared early on, where I am in my career, and, as I shared, I was, started back in the 80s. So that will tell you where I am in my career. And what I tell my team today, I always tell them, I'm here for you. I'm here to give you opportunities. I'm here to make sure that you're growing and that you're constantly learning. And that is, for me, I feel in a great place because I have others that reach out to me and they will say, I'm reaching out to you because of the word you used early on too, because of your wisdom and what you can teach me. And it's such a great feeling. And to me, that is part of success. That is success for me, to know that others are reaching out and they want to learn. But also that I am preparing those that I work with, or that work for, that my team, if you will, that I'm preparing them also for the future. Because as leaders, we have to make sure that we continue to mentor and coach others. The other thing that I had an opportunity to think about is, again, starting my career back in the 80s, and then being, in healthcare in early 90s. And there are folks that I hired in the early 90s that have been very successful. They too became CFOs of large healthcare systems, national. They're senior vice presidents of finance departments, things of that sort, of large organizations in the country. And so to me, that's another piece of the success, and feeling that satisfied and accomplished, both as, we share that executive presence, if you will, but also what we as leaders need to do in our careers. And that is, again, always prepare our teams for growth and give them opportunities to learn and for they themselves to continue growing.
Yeah. And thank you, Cheryl, for saying that, because it's absolutely true. You have to care about your team, and it has to be genuine. Because there's been many a leader where they've cared, quote unquote, but it's not genuine. You can see it's not genuine. But if you really show that you care, and it's a genuine care, then it's going to make you really successful.
I also believe that leads to, culture, right? It's the culture that is that an organization has.
Right.
And you want to make sure that it's that you work for an organization that cares about their people, that allows leaders to care about their people, and there's always that constant growth.
I like that. I would hope that people are caring about people. In this day and age, I think as we think about various factors, one being diversity, and when we see what's going on within the world, and people just want to know, do you care? Do you care about me as a human being? People are coming to work, and they're pretty much traumatized by what's on television, as well as what's going on in the world. And so being able to be a leader, to assess your individuals and be able to give them advice and talk with them and help them get to the next level. If they're ambitious and eager, giving them the advice that they need, but also, sponsoring them for an opportunity if that arises. I think, Simon Sinek says leaders eat last, and in my head I'm thinking as well, leaders also build other leaders. And I think because we have to think about the next generation of how do we continue to be great. And I think we continue to be great by inspiring others, reaching out to others, and helping them lead. What closing remarks would you like to leave the audience with?
So for me, I think the closing remarks would be always strive to do your best. Because again, I'm in the finance world, always that moral compass is very, very important. Always be professional. I think that word professionalism says it all. It's on how you carry yourself. And always, think about the last impression you want to leave. The first impression and the last impression.
Ooh. That's so deep. Okay. Lisa?
For me, I just want to let everybody know to be true to yourself. Don't ever compromise your feelings, your emotions, how you believe, your integrity. That in itself is going to really help you go far, because that will help build the confidence in yourself, and be able to move forward and up.
Oh, okay. So I'm taking away all these statements that you guys are saying as we close up. And one is the first impression and the last impression matters. So as we close this session, I feel like we should all do our Superwoman pose. And for those in the audience, if y'all have our Superman pose, just do it. Lead with confidence. You're strong, you're capable, and we love to see you grow and prosper. So I hope that everyone enjoyed this specific session, as that we've hosted all today, as well as prepare for those interviews that we will be hosting tomorrow. We hope that your dreams are reached. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.